Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we really dig into your sources, trying to unearth those crucial bits of knowledge and insight. And today, we're tackling something that, well, I think is resonating with a lot of us right now. It's this deep-seated, kind of unsettling feeling, that the world around us is just accelerating. Maybe into chaos. You know that feeling, don't you? It's like we're all caught in this relentless current, just trying to make sense of the waves crashing all around us. I mean, just scanning the headlines, looking at the data, it's really hard to ignore. We've seen this truly tragic rise in mass shootings, schools, workplaces. It's heartbreaking. Remember that phrase, going postal? It entered our language way back 80s, 90s, stemming from horrific post office shootings, like that 1986 Edmond, Oklahoma massacre. Just awful. 14 people killed, 6 injured. And now school shootings specifically. They seem to be escalating at just an alarming pace. Recent reports, they indicate hundreds of incidents yearly, K through 12 schools, exposing hundreds of thousands of students to violence just since the turn of the millennium, and the death toll. The annual death toll from these events jumped dramatically, from an average of maybe 8 in the 70s to over 50 between 2000 and 2019. And even more current stats from 2025. Over 100 incidents of gunfire on school grounds, dozens of deaths, nearly 100 injuries. It's just staggering. And it's not just schools, is it? Workplace violence, that's on the rise too. There's a New York Post survey, 2025, showing 15% of people targeted. That's up from 12% just the year before. And public spaces aren't immune either. We see these disturbing incidents like stabbings on public transit. I read that in March 2025, felony assaults on the NYC subway actually surpassed robberies. Over 2,000 index crimes, those really serious ones, murder, rape, aggravated assault reported in 2024 alone. And then you have these high-profile, just deeply disturbing acts, like the assassination of Charlie Kirk, September 11th, 2025 at Utah Valley University. These aren't just isolated events, are they? It feels like they paint this grim, undeniable picture. Makes you wonder, what is really happening? What does it all mean?
That's a powerful question, and it's one so many people are asking right now. What's truly fascinating here, though, is that while these modern trends feel, uniquely intense to us, maybe even unprecedented in our own experience, they're not entirely new in the grand scheme of history. In many ways, they are heightened manifestations, like an amplification of an ancient conflict, a fundamental spiritual dynamic that's been playing out for all of human history. So instead of seeing this as just random, inexplicable chaos, there's actually a profound scriptural lens, an ancient one we can use to understand this unsettling reality. And it offers a surprisingly coherent narrative for these turbulent times we're living through.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this then. That's our mission for this deep dive, isn't it? To explore some of these powerful scriptural insights from your sources, insights that speak directly to this intensifying sense of growing good and growing evil in the world. It's not just about listing problems, right? It's about understanding the framework behind it all.
Precisely. Yeah, the core theme we're going to explore, it's rooted in 2 really foundational biblical passages. First, there's Jesus' profound parable of the wheat and the tares. That's in Matthew chapter 13. And second, the Apostle Paul's stark prophetic teaching in 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. Together, these passages offer a really compelling explanation. They illustrate that good and evil, they won't just coexist. They'll actually intensify. They'll grow side by side. Distinct, yes, but interwoven, until that is a final divine separation. So it's not a static world we're in. It's dynamic. Yeah. It's an unfolding drama.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning, maybe. When we look at today's unsettling events, the violence, the rage, the division, it's easy to feel like we're in completely uncharted territory, maybe unprecedented. But your sources seem to powerfully remind us that the presence of evil, its destructive power, that's been part of the human story from the very, very start.
You're absolutely right. The scriptural narrative, it tackles evil incredibly early on. Mm-hmm. And it sets this stark, sobering precedent for human sin. Just consider the very first murder, Genesis chapter 4, the tragic story of Cain and Abel. It's not just some ancient tale, it's a foundational lesson about how unchecked jealousy, wounded pride, how these things can fester and ultimately lead to horrific acts. It really mirrors the destructive impulses we still see playing out today.
Right. Cain's jealousy.
Exactly. His act was driven by this intense, simmering hatred. God accepted Abel's offering, but not Cain's, and that deeply wounded Cain's ego fueled his resentment. The Bible actually describes God observing Cain's fallen countenance, a clear, visible sign of the anger, the resentment brewing inside him. And then God gives this chilling warning. He tells Cain that sin is crouching at his door. It's such a vivid image, isn't it? Almost primal. Like sin is just lying in wait, ready to pounce, ready to consume him. But Cain lacked self-control, and the tragic outcome. He murdered his own brother. This story just lays bare the human capacity for malice. How our darkest impulses, if we leave them unchecked, can lead to absolutely devastating consequences.
And that wasn't an isolated incident, biblically speaking.
Sadly, no. This pattern of wickedness, it just repeats throughout biblical history. It shows this consistent thread of human depravity. Before the Great Flood, Genesis 6.5 describes the world with this chilling observation. Every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continuously evil.
Wow.
Yeah. Think about the moral corruption of Sodom and Gomorrah in Genesis 19, a society so steeped in wickedness it actually drew divine judgment. We read about Lamech, boastfully recounting his vengeful killings back in Genesis 4, an early example of humanity almost celebrating violence. Or Joseph's brothers. Consumed by jealousy, they sold him into slavery, turned on their own family. That's Genesis 37.
Right.
Later, you see King Saul, his relentless, murderous pursuit of David. Driven by envy, paranoia, it fills chapters of 1 Samuel. And even in the New Testament, King Herod, his brutal slaughter of innocent children in Matthew chapter 2.
Yep.
Driven by fear, right? Fear of a perceived rival king. It tragically echoes this ancient pattern. Fear, power, leading to horrific violence. These aren't just random events. They collectively show that the roots of evil run deep in the human heart. And they've manifested destructively across millennia.
It really is striking, isn't it? How those ancient stories resonate so strongly with the violence we see today. Whether it's Cain's jealousy leading to murder, or those, going postal outbursts from workplace grievances, or even ideological rage sparking school shootings. The underlying human flaws, jealousy, fear, unchecked anger, they just keep sparking conflict and destruction. It feels like the human heart hasn't changed all that much. But maybe the scale or the visibility of it all, maybe that's what sets our modern era apart.
That's a crucial observation. And it leads us right to the Apostle Paul, one of Christianity's earliest, most prolific writers. He addresses this very escalation in his prophetic warning about, quote, the last days. That's in 2 Timothy 3, verses 1 through 5. He writes, quite plainly, in the last days, difficult times will come. And then he paints this detailed picture, almost unnervingly accurate, actually, of the moral decline that would characterize these times. Paul describes people as, well, listen to this list: lovers of self, lovers of money, boasters, proud, blasphemers, disobedient to parents, unthankful, unholy.
Wow, that's quite a list already.
It keeps going. Without natural affection, truce breakers, false accusers, without self-control, brutal, despisers of good, traitors, headstrong, haughty, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God.
Wow.
And he even adds this kicker. They would have a form of godliness but deny its power. Meaning like an outward show of piety, but without any real spiritual substance underneath. And what's truly insightful here isn't just that people become more selfish, it's how this self-absorption subtly eats away at the foundations of community, of compassion. It's not always blatant malice, Sometimes it's just this pervasive indifference, this quiet turning inward that lets bigger evils flourish unchallenged.
Yeah, I can see that.
Think about the materialism we see everywhere, driving endless consumption, dissatisfaction. Or the constant self-promotion, the narcissism that social media just amplifies. Or maybe the casual disregard for traditional values, the outright hostility sometimes towards people who disagree with us. These aren't just abstract vices, right? They describe this deep-seated self-absorption, this hardening of hearts that makes times critical and hard to deal with, as Paul puts it. This moral decay, this pervasive selfishness and disregard for decency. It's essentially the maturation of the tares, those destructive weeds we'll talk more about, growing alongside, kind of choking out the wheat of genuine virtue.
That's a sobering picture of human behavior, absolutely. But here's where it gets, really interesting for me, because it's not just human character that Jesus pointed to as a sign, right? A sign of the approaching end. He also spoke about the natural world, saying it would act as this powerful harbinger of significant changes coming.
Absolutely. Yeah, Jesus' prophecies about the last days, they weren't just limited to human morality. They extended to dramatic shifts, disturbances in the physical world around us. In Matthew 24, he talked about signs in the sun, moon, stars, and distress of nations, also famines and earthquakes. Luke 21, verses 25 to 28, elaborates. It mentions signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the stars, and on the earth, distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. It describes people fainting from fear and the expectation of what is coming on the world.
Wow. Intense imagery.
Very. And in Luke 21, verse 11, he's explicit. There will be great earthquakes, famines, and pestilences in various places, and fearful events and great signs from heaven. He also explained these signs would increase, both in frequency and intensity. He compared them to the birth pangs of a woman in labor, indicating this progressive escalation, this urgency as the time draws near.
Birth pangs, getting closer together, more intense.
Exactly. And when we look at modern statistics, well, we see a dramatic alignment with these prophecies. There's been this undeniable, almost shocking increase in what we often call once-in-a-lifetime storms. Floods, droughts, wildfires across the globe, events that seem to just defy previous norms in their sheer power and frequency. Just look at U.S. data. From 1980 to 2024, there were 403 weather and climate disasters, each costing $1 billion or more.
$403 billion disasters.
Yes. And to put that in perspective, the year 2024 alone saw 27 such U.S. disasters, causing approximately $182.7 billion in damage just in 1 year. Globally, reports from Munich Re first half of 2025, $131 billion in losses, and a staggering 88% of that came directly from weather-related events. NASA, too. A June 2025 study revealed dramatic rises in the intensity and frequency of these extreme events.
That's just an astonishing amount of destruction, of loss. And the sheer number of these record-breaking events happening year after year, it is truly staggering. I mean, it feels like every news cycle brings another headline, doesn't it? Unprecedented flood here, historic drought there, devastating wildfire somewhere else.
Indeed. We've seen specific examples that feel almost, well, biblical in scale. Australia, for instance. They've had these cycles of severe droughts, then historic bushfires, only to then face successive years of record-breaking floods, back and forth. That's not just weather patterns. Earthquakes are part of Jesus' prophecy, too. The annual number of great earthquakes, those magnitude 8.0 or more, it's nearly tripled over the last decade or so. Between 2004 and 2014, there were 18 such earthquakes. That's a 265% increase over the previous century's average. Now, it's crucial here, reporting impartially, right? Scientists often attribute many of these increasing natural disasters to man-made global warming or climate change. That's the scientific consensus often presented. However, regardless of the scientific explanation for the underlying cause, the agreement on the increasing frequency and intensity that's documented by scientific organizations. And it aligns remarkably with Jesus' biblical prophecies about signs in the natural world in the last days.
So the observation matches the prophecy, even if the explanation differs.
Precisely. It's a compelling point where scientific observation and ancient prophecy seem to find common ground in describing a turbulent planet, even if their explanations for the why diverge.
That's a powerful connection. But it is unsettling thinking about these shifts in the physical world. And as you pointed out, Jesus' prophecies weren't just about these big external global events, were they? He also dove into something far more intimate, warning about divisions that would strike right at the heart of human connection, our families, our communities.
He certainly did. Yeah, beyond the signs in nature, his teachings powerfully address the profound societal and even familial divisions that increasingly mark our world. In Matthew 10, verses 34 to 36, he made this statement that, well, on the surface, it seems incredibly provocative. He said, "I came not to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's enemies will be those of his own household."
That sounds harsh. Enemies in your own house.
It does sound harsh. And he echoed it in Luke 12, verses 51 to 53, asking, "Do you think that I have come to establish peace on the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division," he goes on. "For from now on, 5 in one house will be divided, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. They will be divided, father against son, and son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against mother." Now, it's really crucial to clarify here. Jesus wasn't advocating for division or violence as like a desirable outcome. That wasn't the goal. Instead, he was foretelling the profound impact his message of truth would have. He was revealing that following him, well, it would demand choices. Choices that could create a fundamental rift in loyalties. It would challenge existing allegiances. And sometimes, yes, lead to persecution from those closest to his followers. The truth he brought. It compels choices that, in a fallen world, could divide even the most intimate relationships. It speaks to this deep spiritual loyalty that would inevitably clash with human bonds when core values diverged.
And this idea wasn't entirely new even then, was it? It's something that was kind of foreshadowed in older prophecies, too. This idea of internal division within families.
That's exactly right. This teaching of Jesus, it directly echoes a prophetic warning found centuries earlier. In Micah chapter 7, verse 6, it describes a time of deep moral disintegration, betrayal. "For the son dishonors the father, daughter rises against mother, each one opposite the other. It paints this really bleak picture. A world where you can't even trust your own family members, where the very bonds of kinship are broken by opposing loyalties, by pervasive moral decay. It's a stark vision of trust just eroding at the most fundamental level of society.
And connecting that to today.
Well, in our modern context, this feels incredibly relevant, doesn't it? And very personal for many. Our world is just so deeply polarized. Politically, socially, we see division over ideology, fracturing families, friendships, entire communities, in ways that feel, well, maybe unprecedented in our lifetimes. Social media, for all its potential to connect, it often just amplifies this polarization, doesn't it?
Right.
Creates echo chambers, fuels hostility, makes it so easy to demonize the other side.
Oh, absolutely. I think we've all seen that play out. Maybe at a family holiday dinner where politics suddenly becomes the forbidden topic, or friendships strained, maybe even broken because of different views online.
Exactly. Surveys even show that something like 40% of Americans actively avoid political talks with relatives, specifically because of the discord it causes. These political social battles, they're raging not just in the public square, but, just as Jesus predicted, increasingly within private homes. It creates a reality that feels all too familiar to so many of us, this deep-seated relational division. It's another powerful manifestation of the tares growing alongside the wheat, distinguishing people based on their core allegiances, their core values.
Okay, so all these observations, the escalating violence in headlines, the fulfillment of prophecies and natural disasters, this deepening societal division that feels so personal. You're saying they all find their ultimate explanation, their theological framework in Jesus' parable, the parable of the wheat and the tares.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yes, this parable, Matthew 13, verses 24 to 30, it's absolutely central to understanding this dynamic, the dynamic between good and evil in our world. It provides this divine lens for the turbulence we're experiencing. Jesus tells this story, right? A landowner sows good seed wheat in his field, expecting a good harvest. But while everyone's sleeping, an enemy maliciously comes along and sows tares, or weeds, among the wheat. Now, these tares, they're often understood to be darnel. It's a poisonous weed, apparently, that looks remarkably like young wheat in its early stages, making it incredibly difficult to tell them apart until both have matured quite a bit.
Ah, so they look similar at first.
Exactly. So as both the wheat and the tares grow, the landowner's servants notice the weeds. They're puzzled. They go to their master and ask, "Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? How then does it have tares?" And then they ask the logical question, "Should we go and pull them up right now?" And the landowner's response here is absolutely crucial. He says, "No."
No, why not?
He explains, "Lest while you gather up the tares, you also uproot the wheat with them." He gives a clear instruction. "Let both grow together until the harvest." At harvest time, he explains, he'll tell the reapers, "First, gather the tares, bind them in bundles to be burned, and then gather the wheat into his barn." It's a patient plan, a deliberate one, and it prioritizes protecting the good crop.
That imagery is incredibly vivid. It really paints a picture, not just coexistence, but this dynamic process where both sides are developing, growing. And the beauty of this parable, as you highlighted, is that Jesus didn't just leave us hanging with the story. He actually gave us the key to understanding it. He explained every element to his disciples, didn't he?
He did, and that's what makes this parable so uniquely powerful. Jesus later explains it directly to his disciples, Matthew 13, verses 36 to 43. He leaves no ambiguity about its profound meaning. He clarifies each symbolic element. Let's walk through them. The sower. He identifies himself, the Son of Man, as the one sowing the good seed, signifying his divine work in establishing his kingdom.
Okay, Jesus is the sower.
The field. This represents the entire world. So this conflict, good versus evil, it's not just localized, it's global, pervasive.
The whole world, got it.
The good seed. These represent the righteous, those who love and follow God. He calls them children of the kingdom, believers. They're the true crop, destined for the master's barn.
The righteous.
The tares. These symbolize the wicked, the children of the wicked one, unrepentant sinners, those who actively oppose God. They're the imposters, growing alongside the genuine, often hard to distinguish for a while.
A wicked one, sown by.
The enemy.
Right.
Right. Jesus identifies the devil as the one who maliciously sows the tares among the good seed, highlighting the spiritual warfare happening behind the scenes of human history.
The devil, okay.
The harvest.
Right.
This isn't just about farming. It signifies the end of the age, or the day of judgment, the appointed, definitive time for separation and reckoning.
End of the age. Judgment.
The reapers. These are the angels.
No.
They will carry out God's definitive separation and administer his judgment.
Angels do the separating.
The outcome. The tares will be gathered and burned, signifying the wicked will be destroyed by fire, face eternal judgment. Conversely, the wheat will be gathered into the barn, meaning the righteous will be kept safe, will enter God's kingdom, and will shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of their Father. So it's a clear trajectory, ultimate vindication for the faithful.
Okay, so the most profound insight from the parable then, it seems to be the nature of the coexistence itself, that both the wheat and the tares are growing. This isn't static. It's a dynamic, unfolding process that intensifies over time. That feels like a crucial distinction.
You've truly hit on the critical point there,
Yeah.
yes. The parable isn't just saying good and evil exist side by side. It's saying both are growing. Both are maturing. Both are intensifying until the very end. And this is key to understanding our current world. Let's look at the growth of evil, tares. The tares aren't passive bystanders. Their evil is dynamic. It's actively competing with the good. It's becoming more pronounced, more destructive, more brazen over time. This explains why we perceive evil in our world as becoming worse, right? More visible, more vicious. That moral decay Paul warned about in 2 Timothy 3, people being lovers of self, brutal, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, that directly aligns with the maturation of these tares.
They're ripening in a bad way.
Exactly. Their roots get deeper. Their poisonous nature becomes more apparent, often hijacking things that seem good and twisting them for harmful ends. This intensification of wickedness, it manifests in everything, from the escalating violence we talked about, school shootings, workplace assaults, to the widespread self-absorption and disregard for decency that just permeates modern society. It corrodes the very fabric of trust and community. The sources really highlight that evil's function deteriorates. It gets worse, more destructive, more brazen over time. This helps us understand why those alarming statistics aren't just random noise. They're a direct manifestation of this growth, a sign of the tares maturing towards their ultimate fate.
Okay, that covers the tares growing. But the parable says both grow together.
Yes. Crucially, the parable assures us that simultaneously, the growth of good, wheat, the righteous, the wheat, they're also growing. This isn't a time of decline for goodness. It's actually a period of intense development. Believers are maturing in their faith. Their character is being tested, refined. Their spiritual fruit is being formed, often precisely because of the struggle and pressures of a darkening world.
So the pressure helps refine the wheat.
In a way, yes. This process, often called sanctification, means believers are being made more holy, more like God. Their character is tested, refined, much like an athlete training for a really challenging race. They're becoming more resilient, more steadfast, more purposeful in their goodness. And this growth of good, it isn't just an internal thing. It manifests in tangible ways, too. Think about grassroots movements for social justice, or quiet acts of compassion in communities, the resilience people show facing adversity, or the profound generosity we often see rise up in times of crisis.
Yeah, you do see that.
Those are all reflections of the wheat deepening its roots, bearing fruit, often in direct response to the darkening world around it. As evil becomes more brazen, more visible, the goodness of the wheat is called to become more radiant, more unwavering. It implies this intensified spiritual polarity. The distinction between good and evil gets sharper, more apparent as both mature. It's not a time of moral neutrality, it's a time of sharpened contrasts, making it clearer who stands for what, you know?
Sharpened contrasts. That makes sense.
So just to summarize, the parable of the wheat and the tares delivers several profoundly important teachings for us right now as we navigate our world. First, patience. God, in his sovereignty, allows good and evil to grow together in this present age. This teaches us patience, unwavering faith in his ultimate plan. He doesn't just jump in and eradicate evil prematurely, because doing so might inadvertently harm the good, the precious wheat.
Right. Don't pull up the wheat with the weeds.
Exactly. Second, coexistence. It's impossible, and God actually warns against even trying to perfectly separate good from evil in the present world. We just lack the perfect discernment, and human attempts could lead to unintentional harm to the righteous. They have to grow side by side until the appointed time.
Okay.
Third, ultimate judgment. But this coexistence, it's temporary. At the end of the age, God will administer a final, definitive judgment. The wicked will be destroyed, the righteous eternally preserved in his kingdom. That is a certainty.
A definite endpoint.
Yes. And fourth, a warning against premature judgment. The parable explicitly cautions us against that human temptation to judge and try to uproot people prematurely. We lack the perfect discernment, the divine authority, and such actions could inadvertently harm true believers. It's really a call to humility, to trust in God's perfect timing and wisdom.
It really is a profound framework, not just explaining what we're seeing, but also why it's happening and how it fits into this larger divine narrative that ends in justice and restoration. So, okay, Given all this, the escalating violence, the signs and nature, the divisions, and this divine explanation for the parable, what does this call us to do? What about the listener? What's your role, our role in this unfolding story? It's not just about watching from the sidelines, is it?
It's anything but detached. No. This is where the parable moves from being an ancient explanation to immediate, compelling application. It offers both a solemn warning and powerful encouragement for our daily lives. First, we're called not to be surprised by evil's growth. The increase in violence, injustice, sin that we see daily, it's not an anomaly. It is an expected part of this divine process. The tares will continue to grow in visibility and destructive power until the harvest. This understanding helps us make sense of those alarming statistics we talked about earlier: shootings, violence, division. It gives us a crucial framework for processing the news without just succumbing to utter despair or bewilderment. We can recognize it as a foreseen part of a larger plan.
Okay, so expect it. Don't be shocked.
Right. However, and this is equally important, we are called not to be discouraged, because simultaneously the wheat is growing too. Believers are experiencing sanctification, that process of being made more holy, more Christ-like. Churches are maturing, acts of love, justice, mercy, truth. They are flourishing amidst the challenges. The intense pressures of a wicked world, they don't necessarily stifle the faithful. Often they serve to test and refine them, making their goodness more resilient, their witness more potent. This intensified spiritual polarity means that as the darkness grows, the light is meant to shine even brighter, providing hope, providing direction for those feeling lost.
So expect evil, but don't lose heart, because good is also growing.
Exactly. Next, the parable teaches us discernment, but patience. We are not to attempt premature judgment. We're not to try and violently eradicate those we perceive as tares. Remember the landowner's instruction: let both grow together. That was specifically to avoid harming the wheat. We have to trust God's perfect timing for judgment. But this patience doesn't mean ignoring evil, not at all. It means we exercise discernment. We know evil for what it is. We speak truth to power when appropriate, but we leave the ultimate separation, the ultimate judgment to God's appointed reapers, his angels at the end of the age.
Like a gardener tending the good plants, knowing the weeds are there, but being careful not to destroy the crop when dealing with them.
That's a good analogy. We focus on cultivating our own garden, so to speak. Which leads to the next point. There's a clear and urgent call to lifelong spiritual cultivation. Just like athletes train rigorously, right? For endurance, peak performance. We're called to actively participate in the growing good, within ourselves and in the world around us. This means a conscious daily effort to deny the impulses of the flesh, to be transformed by God's word, to yield to the Holy Spirit. As 2 Peter chapter 1 encourages, we should make every effort to add to your faith goodness, and to goodness, knowledge, to knowledge, self-control, to self-control, perseverance. It's a building process.
Adding layers of virtue.
Yes, to perseverance, godliness, to godliness, brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness, love. Peter says if you possess these qualities in increasing measure, they keep you from being ineffective, unproductive. This active cultivation lets us bear that rich, visible fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. That's Galatians 5. We're told to run with endurance the race set before us in Hebrews 12, striving to be that visible light in an increasingly darkening world, just as Jesus called his followers in Matthew 5. Your personal growth, your commitment to goodness and truth, it's not just for you, it's a beacon for others.
So it's an active, ongoing process.
Very active. And finally, perhaps most profoundly, the parable offers deep, unshakable hope in ultimate judgment and vindication. Despite the current turbulence, the apparent chaos, the harvest will come. And at that harvest, the final, definitive separation will occur. God's perfect justice will be served. His righteous reward will be given. For those who endure, who remain faithful, the wheat will be gathered safe in God's barn, entering his eternal kingdom, shining forth as the sun. This provides such profound peace, such reassurance, knowing that even when the world feels utterly out of control, God is ultimately in control. He knows the difference between the wheat and the tares, and his plan will culminate in justice, restoration, and eternal security for his own. This hope, it empowers us to act with courage, with love today, knowing our efforts are not in vain.
That really is a powerful and incredibly relevant message for today, isn't it? It offers both that sobering reality check on the state of the world and a profound, actionable source of encouragement and hope for each of us listening. So we've really explored how the escalating evil, those dramatic signs in nature, the deep divisions in society that, well, that you see all around you.
Yeah.
They aren't just random acts of chaos. They are, in fact, the fulfillment of ancient prophecies and the dynamic, active unfolding of Jesus's parable of the wheat and the tares. It's a framework that brings profound clarity to a world that often feels pretty senseless.
Exactly. The parable reminds us that while the tares, evil, deception, wickedness, they are indeed flourishing, growing more intense. So too is the wheat. God's people are growing too. In godliness, love, patience, truth, transformation. It's a period of intensified spiritual polarity, like we said, where the contrast between light and darkness becomes starker. But God is absolutely in control. He knows the difference. And his justice is certain, unwavering.
So as you navigate a world that feels increasingly turbulent, increasingly polarized, remember, this tension isn't an accident. It seems it's a necessary part of a divine plan, preparing the righteous for a glorious harvest. Your role isn't just to observe, it's to actively participate in that growth, to shine brighter as the world darkens.
May you be found faithful, bearing abundant fruit, abounding in love, even as the world around us grows increasingly turbulent, trusting that the final definitive separation is a future certainty, and the righteous will ultimately be preserved, kept safe, shining forth in God's eternal barn. Maybe think about this. What quiet act of spiritual cultivation will you undertake today, knowing that the harvest is surely coming?